Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our English Learning Podcast. Today, we have a brand new topic that is very exciting. We are going to talk about two words that confuse almost every English learner around the world: must and have to. How are you doing today, John?
Hello, Amy, and a warm welcome to all our listeners joining us today. I am doing great, thank you. You are absolutely right about today's topic. Must and have to are very tricky words. When you look in the dictionary, they both mean that something is necessary, but native speakers use them in very different ways. Today, we will explain this difference slowly, clearly, and with many easy examples.
That sounds perfect. I think the biggest problem is that in many native languages, there's only one translation for both of these words. But in English, the feeling behind the words is completely different. Let us start with the basic meaning. Can you explain the general idea of these two words?
Yes, of course. Both must and have to talk about obligation. An obligation is something you need to do, and you do not have a choice. You cannot say no to it. However, the secret to choosing the right word is asking yourself one simple question. Who is making the rule? Is the rule coming from inside you, or is the rule coming from outside?
Inside you or outside you? That is a very interesting and visual way to think about it. Let us break that down for our listeners. Let us talk about the word must first. What do you mean by coming from inside?
When we use must, we're talking about an internal obligation. This means the speaker personally feels that something is very important or necessary. It's your own rule, your own feeling, or your own opinion. No one else is forcing you to do it. You are deciding it for yourself.
Can you give our listeners a clear, everyday example of that internal feeling?
Certainly. Imagine you look in the mirror and you feel very tired. You have dark circles under your eyes. You might say to yourself, "I must go to sleep early tonight." Your boss did not tell you to sleep early. The police did not tell you. You are telling yourself because you feel it is necessary for your health.
I see. Another example could be about relationships. Imagine you suddenly remember a good friend. You might say, "I must call my mother today. It has been a long time." Again, it's a personal feeling of obligation. You want to do it because you feel it is the right thing to do.
Exactly. You were giving yourself a personal command. Now let's look at the other side of the coin. Let's talk about have to. We use have to for external obligations. This means the rule comes from outside. It comes from a law, a boss, a teacher, or a system. It's not your personal feeling, it's a fact.
So it's about rules and regulations that we cannot control. For example, if I work at a hospital as a nurse, I cannot wear my normal t-shirt and jeans. I would say, I have to wear a uniform at work.
That is a perfect example. You say have to because the hospital management made the rule, not you. Even if you hate wearing the uniform, you still have to do it. Another common example is traffic laws. You say you have to stop at a red light. We say this because the government makes the law. It's an outside rule that applies to everyone.
This makes everything so much clearer. To summarize this first part for our listeners, must is personal. It's about your feelings, your opinions, and your own rules. Have to is factual. It's about outside rules, laws, and schedules that other people make for you.
Yes, that's the most important basic rule. If you remember, must equals internal and have to equals external, you'll sound much more natural when you speak English.
Welcome back, everyone. In the first part, we learned a very helpful rule. We learned that must is for internal, personal rules, and have to is for external rules or laws. But now we are moving to a very interesting part of the lesson. What happens when we make these words negative? What happens when we say must not and do not have to?
That is a wonderful question to me. This is exactly where many English learners get trapped. In the positive form, must and have to are kind of similar. They both mean you need to do something. But in the negative form, must not and do not have to are completely different. They have totally opposite meanings. I always call this the danger zone for English learners.
The danger zone. That sounds very serious. Let us help our listeners stay safe. Let us start with must not, which we often shorten to mustn't. What does mustn't really mean?
Mustn't means strict prohibition. It means something is absolutely not allowed. If you do it, there will be big trouble, a bad consequence, or it might even be dangerous. When you hear mustn't, you must stop. You do not have a choice.
Can you give us a clear example to help us imagine this feeling?
Yes, imagine you are visiting a beautiful museum. There's a very old, very expensive painting on the wall. The security guard will say, "You mustn't touch the painting. This is a strict rule. It is forbidden." If you touch it, the guard will be angry and you might have to leave the museum.
That makes perfect sense. Another example could be in a hospital. We can say, you mustn't smoke inside the hospital. It is against the law and it is bad for the patients. So mustn't is very strong. It means do not do this under any circumstances.
Exactly. Now let us look at the other phrase, don't have to, or don't have to. This phrase is much softer, much friendlier, and much more relaxed. Don't have to means there's no obligation. It is not necessary. You can do it if you want to, but nobody is forcing you. You have the freedom to choose.
Ah, I love the feeling of don't have to. It sounds like a weekend.
Yes, the weekend is the perfect example. Imagine it is Friday night. You can say to yourself, tomorrow is Saturday. I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. You can wake up at 6 a.m. if you really want to watch the sunrise, but it is not a rule. You have the choice to sleep until 9 a.m.
That is a great feeling. Let me try another example. Imagine I invite you to my house for a dinner party. I want you to feel relaxed, so I tell you, you don't have to bring a gift. This means bringing a gift is not a requirement. If you bring a bottle of wine, I will be happy. But if you bring nothing, I am still very happy to see you. It is entirely your choice.
That is a beautiful and polite example. To really help our listeners remember, let us put both negative forms in the same situation. Let us imagine you are going to a library.
Okay, a library. How do we use both phrases there?
In the library, the librarian might say, "You mustn't speak loudly." This is a strict rule. If you speak loudly, you ruin the quiet space for everyone else. But the librarian might also say, "You don't have to read all the books today. You can borrow them and take them home."
Wow, that side-by-side comparison is incredibly clear. Mustn't speak loudly means it is forbidden. Don't have to read all the books means there's no pressure. You have a choice.
Exactly. So for our listeners, please remember this big difference. Do not mix them up. If you tell your boss, "You mustn't pay me this month," your boss will not give you a salary. You should say, "You don't have to pay me right now. Tomorrow is fine."
That is a very funny and true example. Words really matter. Well, we have covered the positive forms and the negative forms so far. Our listeners are doing a great job following along. Welcome to part 3 of our special lesson on must and have to. So far, we have learned the basic rules for the present tense, and we have learned the very important danger zone of the negative forms. Now it is time for a little bit of time travel. How do we talk about obligations in the past and in the future?
That is a brilliant question. Time travel in English grammar can sometimes be confusing, but I promise this rule is actually very easy. Let us start by looking at the past tense. Let us talk about yesterday, or last week, or when you were a child. What happens to the word must when we talk about the past?
Well, normally in English, we add the letters ed to the end of a verb to make it past tense. For example, work becomes worked, play becomes played. So do we say musted?
No, absolutely not. Please never say musted. That word does not exist in the English dictionary. This is a very common mistake. But the truth is, the word must does not have a past tense form at all. It's a very special, stubborn word. It only likes to live in the present.
Wow, so must has no past tense. If that is true, what do we do when we want to express a strong personal feeling from yesterday? How do we say that we needed to do something in the past?
When we talk about the past, everything becomes much simpler. We use the past tense of have to. The past tense of have is had, so the magic phrase is had to. It doesn't matter if the obligation was internal from your own feelings or external from your boss. In the past, they both share exactly the same form, had to.
That actually makes it much easier for English learners. We do not need to choose. Let me try some examples to make sure I understand. If I'm talking about an outside rule from yesterday, I can say, yesterday it rained very heavily, so I had to take a taxi to work.
Yes, that is a perfect example of an external situation in the past. You had no choice because of the weather.
And what about a personal, internal feeling from the past? I could say, last night I watched a very sad movie, and I had to call my best friend to talk about it. Nobody forced me, but it was a strong feeling. I still use had to, right?
Exactly right. Whether it's the weather forcing you or your own emotions making a rule, yesterday's obligations are always had to. It's a very simple and very safe rule. Now, what about the future? What if we're talking about tomorrow or next year?
I know that for the future, we usually use the word will. So do we say will must?
No, we do not say will must. Just like the past tense, must does not like the word will. If you want to talk about an obligation in the future, especially a plan or a rule that will happen later, you use will have to.
Will have to. That sounds very natural. Let me think of a daily life situation. If my friend invites me to a party next Friday, but I am very busy, I can say, I'm sorry, but I will have to work late next Friday.
Yes, that is a very polite and correct way to say it. Another example is planning a holiday. You can say, if we want to travel to Europe next summer, we will have to apply for a visa. This is a future requirement. It's a necessary step that we need to do later.
That is very clear. But I have one small question. Sometimes I hear native speakers use must when they're talking about tomorrow. For example, I must wake up early tomorrow. Is that incorrect?
Ah, that is a very sharp observation. No, it is not incorrect. You can use must with a future word like tomorrow if you're making the decision right now in the present. In your example, I must wake up early tomorrow, the obligation is a personal feeling you have right at this moment. You're making a strong promise to yourself right now. However, if it's a general future fact, will have to is always the safest and most natural choice.
I understand. So, to keep it simple for our listeners, for the past, always use had to. For the future, will have to is your best friend. But if you're making a strong personal promise to yourself right now about tomorrow, must is also okay.
Perfect summary, Amy. Grammar rules can sometimes feel like a puzzle, but when we break them down into simple situations like this, the pieces fit together beautifully.